Hello everyone and welcome once again to another episode of Geekfest Rants. My name is Carlos Perone and today we have part 3 of our New York Toy Fair 2012 special. This time around, on our final installment of our Toy Fair show, we are going to be covering Hasbro. Now, as some of you might already know, not only is Hasbro probably the leader as far as Star Wars toys go, and by that I mean its action figure and spaceship line, but Hasbro also has a whole bunch of other licenses that they promote either themselves or they hold licenses to, just like Star Wars. Now, when you hold a license to something, you basically pay or contribute or have some kind of a partnership with a company that lets you use their brand, if you will, in order to create toys. But what Hasbro also has is their own line of toys that they don't really need to partner with anybody. And this year was a pretty big year for Hasbro, planning it out that is, because there are 2 big Hasbro-inspired products that are coming out that, they're trying to push heavily. One of them being the sequel to the G.I. Joe film, which is a Hasbro property that will obviously have them bringing out their own product and promoting it heavily. The other one is Battleship, another Hasbro product that is a self-promoted product. But primarily what I'm interested in, and we've done shows like this in the past, is the Star Wars line. Now, let me give you a little background about Hasbro and Toy Fair for this year. I attended Toy Fair this year and visited the Jacob Javits Center, where they had the majority of all of the toy distributors and manufacturers there promoting their product, showing you their showrooms and their booths and so forth and so forth. Hasbro, unfortunately, was not there at the Javits Center. Because I guess they are such a big company and such a profitable company and such a hard to get to company, were located at a separate location. So I was not able to actually visit their location. They did have, I believe, one day where they kind of try to bring as many people into that location as possible, but it was pretty impossible to be able to get access to that. So instead what we have is what we've done on previous years is we waited for their slideshow press releases that they put out every year. Now granted, keep in mind that as the first unveiling of their products is taking place, lots of other bloggers are there and lots of other media outlets are there. And those that are really into toys, would let you know immediately through the internet or through social networking sites what they're showing you. One of the things off the bat that seemed a little different this year was that they were promoting so many products, especially their own products, like I mentioned before. And from what I understand, the actual presentation for Star Wars, the Star Wars line, was pretty short. It was about something between 15 and 20 minutes long, which is kind of short when you think about it, when you compare them to previous years or when you compare them to previous presentations. When I attended New York Comic Con last year, Hasbro had their own room where they were doing their unveiling presentation, their usual slideshow. And it was a pretty long event. I mean, it was at least a half hour long, I believe. And obviously it was very heavily focused on Star Wars. As a matter of fact, I believe it was mostly Star Wars. They were there with product and their slideshow and all the promotional materials. So this time around, like I said before, I believe it was a little shorter than usual. Now, another reason why the presentation might have been shorter than usual is because, as I've explained on previous podcasts having to do with toys, it used to be that their outlets for promoting or unveiling certain toys was maybe one event a year, whether it's a convention, a toy fair, or something of that sort. Nowadays, it seems that Star Wars products end up getting split between at least 3 yearly events. One of them is San Diego Comic-Con. That's in the summer. They do a major unveiling there where they show you some product that's coming up. Then you have New York Toy Fair, which is a secondary place where they might perform one of these unveilings of product. They got to show you something because they have to be there to promote their material. A third place that doesn't happen every year, but it seems to happen every couple of years is Celebration. when they have the Star Wars Celebration conventions, they usually save some material to be unveiled there. Now, you also have a smaller batch of toy fairs that are running, on different parts of the world. I believe Germany has one, and even London might even have one too, where they do have to bring their product out and be able to show you something. So what happens is when you have these major events taking place, they try to spread out the news they have for that year amongst those places. So where on previous occasions you might get more like an information dump, where all of a sudden you get a ton of information coming all in one event, they spread it out. So they do a couple of special things for this convention, a couple of things for this toy fair, a couple of things for this other event. So they kind of spread it all out. And what ends up happening is that you end up getting not a lot of, big gigantic information in some of these events. Now, off the bat, the way that they apparently presented this year's Toy Fair announcements was that they kind of combined them, because I believe what happened is because they were diluting, the information so much in terms of not having too much of it to go around, they added certain things that were already part of previous announcements. For example, at New York Comic Con, they announced certain toys coming out, certain lines, certain action figures, certain ships, and this and that. And what they did is they kind of brought them out to New York Toy Fair also to kind of supplement for the amount of information that they were able to give out this time. So going basically through their product line for the 2012 year, we have to keep in mind that as far as Star Wars goes, they're still heavily promoting, obviously, the Phantom Menace in 3D. This is something that we knew about for a while now. As far back as even New York Comic Con, they were giving us hints that they were going to brand everything with the Phantom Menace packaging, and we've seen that. We've already started seeing it as early as January. Certain items would show up and they were all branded with Phantom Menace logos on them. And this goes across the board. The branding of a product like that for this particular year, not only does it go to Hasbro, but it goes to Lego, it goes to many other toy manufacturers that do hold some sort of a Star Wars license. It's part of their marketing campaign is to promote the film that they're trying to promote, obviously. So we did see that particular logo moving forward throughout this year. Now, as usual, the lines have shrunk in terms of how many different categories of action figures they have. I believe we talked about this before when we did New York Comic Con, that the basic three lines that are now being used for Star Wars are the Movie Hero line, the Clone War line, and the Vintage Collection line. Obviously, the Movie Heroes are basically movie-themed action figures with movie packaging. And by movie packaging, I'm talking about this particular Darth Maul Phantom Menace, branding. The Clone War series of action figures are Darth Maul Phantom Menace look. And the third one is the Vintage Collection. This is a collection they've already started about a year or so ago, where they started bringing out the classic Kenner look of big picture, blackish dark background, silver letters. It's a callback to the old 70s packaging, where they now repackage figures in that manner. One of the, what you could call a noticeable new addition, I guess, to the line of Star Wars figures is something that, again, we've known about this for a while now, is that they were coming out with light-up lightsaber figures that have lightsabers built into their hands, and that you would press a little button or move the arm a certain way, and the lightsaber would light up. Now, these are starting to show up already in stores. Not all the characters, obviously, only certain characters that are holding a lightsaber, characters like Obi-Wan, a Darth Maul, a Qui-Gon Jinn, or a Darth Vader type of figure, or an Anakin type of figure, that sort of thing. And some of these, they're new, they're interesting, they're pretty neat when you actually see them functioning. The catch is that these are built into the hand. The hilt is built into the hand, molded into the hand, if you will. So you cannot remove them. They're going to be holding that lightsaber for as long as you have them. And for people that are interested in having these last, one of the drawbacks about these particular figures is that you cannot replace the battery. Their batteries are built into the arm, I guess, into the whole structure of the figure. The electronics are internal, so you cannot access the electronics. So hopefully this isn't the type of toy that not only will it, after a while, just stop working, but hopefully the battery won't melt and destroy the figure from the inside out. So something to keep in mind when it comes to these figures. They are introducing, because this is the Phantom Menace year, not only the 3D film is out, but they are kind of like repackaging these Phantom Menace figures. Some of them are, they're brand new sculpts, but they are heavily promoting the fact that they are putting these on cards again, for the second time around. Obviously, they're not using the old Phantom Menace packaging, the original. I remember it was like an orangey, brownish, reddish kind of card backs. They're using, we mentioned before, the movie Heroes card backs, which this year happened to be Phantom Menace, Darth Maul looking cards. And some of the other figures that are not necessarily lightsaber electronic ones, you have characters like Jar Jar Binks, you have young Anakin Skywalker and Padme from Phantom Menace. You also have coming later in the year, Luke Skywalker from Empire, from the attack on the AT-ATs from Hoth. Like I said before, light up Vader, light up Anakin Skywalker with the light up lightsabers. A couple of mini vehicles are being released. We talked about mini vehicles before. Mini vehicles are a tough little thing because they're really not accurately made to anything that you've seen most of the time on a film or on a TV show, Clone Wars in this example. But they're made because marketing-wise, they figured a lot of times they conclude that, kids want to have vehicles, but they don't want to spend the price of some of these higher price vehicles. You're talking about vehicles that could run anywhere from, 25 to 120, 150 bucks. So they make these smaller vehicles. This is nothing new. They've done this for years now. They used to do them back in the Kenner days where you have the mini rigs. All these bizarre looking vehicles that were never in the movie would be there, and, people would buy them because that's basically the only ones you could afford. But they do obviously try to make them look like they belong to this movie, because then it would make no sense. So there's a couple of new ones. There's a Clone Wars attack recon fighter with Anakin Skywalker. So it's like a mini Anakin ship, if you will. And they also have a Clone Wars Republic assault submarine with Scuba Clone Trooper. Again, this one might be kind of reminiscent to that Clone War episode we had recently where it takes place underwater with all the Mon Calamari people. These ships are slated for somewhere around April to come out. The larger size ships now, the ones I talked about earlier, the ones that are a little more expensive, you have a Republic freighter tank, which I believe they might have manufactured one of these before, a different color, and Anakin's Jedi Starfighter, which they definitely made this before. This one's a little different, they retweaked it a little bit, and the Naboo Starfighter, which, again, they remade it. It's I think it's a little bit bigger, actually. It looks really cool looking when you see it in person, when they open it up, because I remember they had one on display last year at New York Comic Con. These are all slated for March. Now, on the Clone Wars side of some of these action figures that are coming out, you have a Republic Commando boss, you have a new Obi-Wan, you have a Captain Rex, but some of these are kind of like they put them out before, or some of them were part of packs, like the Republic Commando boss. I believe they put out a pack of Republic Commandos in the past, and I guess they're going to now put them out individually. There's an Isla Secura wearing like a breathing gear, face mask type of deal. You have Ahsoka from the underwater episodes, those Mon Calamari episodes, Cloak Commander Wolf, Super Battle Droids. Again, these are Clone Wars style figures. And these you're not going to see until around May. There's a couple of 3-figure battle packs. Phantom Menace, once again, we're dealing with. So you have your Obi-Wan, your Qui-Gon, and your Darth Maul dual set. They also have a Bespin Battle 3-pack, which is a Vader, a Luke, and a Boba Fett. Reminiscent of Empire. This is another May set. The big ship this year, and they do this every year practically, and we've talked about this. In the past, they put out, depending on the year, a big, massive playset / vehicle. It's usually a vehicle. It's rarely a playset. I believe they've mentioned many times in the past that playsets don't sell, vehicles sell, so they have to make them large vehicles. And in the past, we've had a large Millennium Falcon that was put out. We've had the AT-AT, gigantic looking AT-AT, very successful as far as selling them went. We had a Republic Walker. We had a Republic Turbo Tank, big, giant, massive ships. Last year, they put out it was like a Republic ship that turned into a base that you could open it up. I believe that one wasn't very successful. It was a very odd vehicle to put out. This year, they're putting the Trade Federation MTT, which is the multi-troop transport vehicle. This is, again, because we're dealing with Phantom Menace this year, this is a Phantom Menace vehicle, which is basically the transport vehicle that holds all of the battle droids as they're being deployed off the ship. As you remember in the film, dropships come down. Out of the dropships, all these tank-looking vehicles come out, and out of these tanks, these rows and rows of battle droids are deployed from inside this vehicle. They kind of slide out, and all the droids drop down, in rows. That's what they're selling you. The vehicle is got tons of electronics. You press a button, certain doors open up, certain compartments open up, droids start coming out of these compartments. And it comes with, I believe, 20 battle droids with this ship, with this vehicle. Granted, only 4 of those battle droids are actually articulated battle droids. The other 16 are posed to be in their specific slots to be able to be deployed. So, you do get a lot of something, but it's not exactly the type of thing you would get when you open up a figure. Most of them are posed already. They're not articulated. This is going to be a pretty big item. It's one of these over $100 items, which, you see them around Christmas time, and hopefully they lower the price at a certain point because they do get expensive. But it is an odd vehicle in terms of it's not very iconic. It's better in terms of more iconic than last year's vehicle, but I don't think it has the weight of something like a Falcon or an AT-AT. Now let's take a look at the vintage collection for this year. Again, these are the figures that come with the vintage Kenner card backs. They are putting out an oddball character, which is a pilot for the Republic. They're putting out a Grand Moff Tarkin, very important than Grand Moff Tarkin, because Grand Moff Tarkin never had a card back in the Kenner days. So this is something that the collectors and the fans have been asking for a very long time, is an actual card back, so it kind of looks like it belonged back then. Grand Moff Tarkin was a big character in Star Wars, if you think about it, but he never got an action figure in the old Kenner days. And here it is, this time around with a card back that fits that line. They also have a Nikto Guard, which is part of the Return of the Jedi line. These are all June figures I'm talking about here. They have a Starkiller figure from the Force Unleashed 2. They have a Shea Vizsla from the Old Republic, another one of these new characters. Here's an interesting pair. They was announced way earlier, and they are finally getting around to putting them out. Now, we're not going to see these till around July, so we're talking about middle of the summer. They're putting out Ahsoka and Obi-Wan Kenobi from the Clone Wars, but instead of them being animated-looking characters, they are lifelike-looking characters. So they're kind of making the real-life version of what an animated character would look like. So if you look at some of the pictures of these characters, they look a little odd because it's like you're used to seeing them very skinny, very thin. Their features are very squarish, jaws and stuff like that, Ahsoka and Obi-Wan. Now they're looking like real characters, like an actor is playing them. So that looks a little different. They're also going to put out a Lumat, which is one of the Ewoks from Jedi. Nien Nunb, again, Jedi, a Weequay from Jedi, the Emperor's Royal Guard, the Red Guard from Jedi. They also announced that this year's San Diego Comic-Con exclusive is going to be a set of 6 action figures to be packaged in what looks to be the carbon freezing chamber. In other words, it's a series of 6 figures all going in a kind of like a circle to look like the carbon freezing chamber when they're all wrapped around each other. Now, what's interesting about this particular line or this particular exclusive is that they're going to use card backs that they are never been used before. These are what I believe they said were the runner-up finalists in terms of when the original Kenner line was put out. This is the second design that never made it. This is the runner-up design that never made it. So they are repackaging 6 figures in that manner and putting a bonus figure in the middle. The way it works is you have 1 figure from every film being represented in that 6 set. So for episode 1, you have Jar Jar Binks. Episode 2, you have a clone trooper lieutenant. Episode 3, you have a clone trooper. Episode 4, you have a sand trooper. Episode 5, you have Princess Leia with the Bespin costume. Episode 6, you have Darth Vader with like the Jedi lightning around him from Return of the Jedi. And the bonus figure that's included in the center of the package, which you kind of raise it up and you slide it up, is a Jar Jar in carbonite, which is a kind of like a goof type of thing, because obviously it's not canon to anything. I believe the history behind this particular figure, if you want to call it, is that somebody made one and for whatever reason it was brought to some conventions, and then I think it eventually was donated to Lucasfilm. And I don't know if you can call it a fan favorite. It's an unusual bonus figure because it's not canon whatsoever, attached to anything. The other thing that's a little odd about this set, which the cards are really nice looking cards. I really admire the cards very much, that design. But what's very odd as far as I'm concerned is what characters they picked to represent these films. I mean, Jar Jar, yeah, okay, fine, but they have 3 troopers representing 3 other films. And it seems really bizarre that they would pick those troopers. They would pick those characters. They're not iconic. So, again, I don't understand what the deal is. This is an exclusive to San Diego Comic-Con, so, odds are most people will not get their hands on this, and they will show up on eBay sooner or later, but you're going to be paying a ton of money because you're dealing with 6 carded figures with this lost design plus that bonus one. So it's going to be a tough one. Continuing with the vintage line, now we're dealing more towards the August, end of summer time. You have the prune face character from Jedi. You have a Republic Trooper from the Old Republic game. And they announced the Fans' Choice poll winner that they did last year is Mara Jade Skywalker. This is, again, one of these EU characters that they're turning into an action figure. But this one, we're not going to see till 2013. So this is kind of like a future one. So I guess they're going to start working on it now. Some of the other Star Wars related Hasbro lines that they're expanding on are these Ultimate Effects lightsabers. Now, these are not the large ones, the ones that I'm into, the life-size ones. These are the smaller ones, the smaller size they introduced last year, which are light up. They're pretty good detailed, and they're good because kids can really, beat them a little bit without destroying them. They're not as fragile, I guess, as the $100+ ones. These are about the $35 price range, and they've already put out a Luke and a Darth Vader, and then they did a green Luke. They did a green Qui-Gon, I believe, and now they're going to introduce a blue Obi-Wan and a red Darth Maul that if you buy two of them, you can connect them and turn them into, the double-sided lightsaber that Darth Maul uses. Another line that they're pushing heavily is the fighter pods. These are these little kind of rubbery, squishy representations of the action figures, and there's vehicles attached with them. There's tons of these. This is one of these sidelines that they're doing that I'm personally not very interested in, but they're trying to, promote it heavily for collectors. And the other one that's brand new also this year, it's called the Amped Collection. And these are vehicles, basically iconic vehicles that you can take apart and rearrange them in different ways. So you can create 3, 4, 5 different vehicles out of one, one at a time, obviously, or you can start combining them together and do all kinds of weird stuff. Again, this is for people that are really into rearranging and building existing vehicles. It's almost kind of like this supplements the fact that they're no longer going to be having the Transformer Star Wars line, so you can turn your ship into something else. Again, I'm not very interested in these. They're doing tons of classic vehicles, prequel vehicles, all kinds of stuff like that. So that's pretty much as far as the new stuff goes. With my particular collection of what I do collect from Hasbro, the only things that I'm really looking forward to is something that was already announced before that is starting to come out now very slowly as we speak. They're starting to pop into stores here and there, and that is the deleted scene figures from the Blu-ray release from last year. And by that, I'm talking about your Sandstorm Lando, Sandstorm Leia, Luke building the lightsaber from Tatooine. There's Colonel Kraken, which is a character from Return of the Jedi. He's one of these Millennium Falcon crew members that is operating one of the turret guns. And a rebel pilot from Return of the Jedi. That's a Mon Calamari race pilot. Again, Return of the Jedi. I believe he might be flying an A-Wing fighter. These are all vintage packaged and are the only ones that I'm really interested in because I do have one of my rules for collecting. I go after the deleted scene characters, as aside from concept art characters and prototype characters and that sort of thing. These are definitely the ones I'm looking for. And unfortunately, these are part of last year. If you think about it, these were introduced last year. They were announced last year and they're not part of this year's line. But because, as I mentioned earlier, the line is kind of small, at least what they're announcing in this particular event, they kind of padded it a little bit with some of these things. They had these on display. They actually had them there. If you look at their toy display area, a lot of these figures were there just being displayed. Not all of them are packaged. Not all of them were carded. They were loose. A lot of prototypes out there. You saw stuff that, the joints looked a little weird. They looked like they're being held together with glue because a lot of times they just bring you prototypes. They don't have the final product yet. It's kind of like a double-edged sword here. I do love the fact that they're putting out these deleted scene characters, and I do like the fact that they're putting them out on vintage cards. The catch is that for the Tatooine Luke, the Sandstorm Leia, and the Sandstorm Lando, they're using art. They're not using pictures. And that's a little disappointing because the ones with pictures make them really look like it's something that belongs in the Kenner line. But for whatever reason, I guess they couldn't find enough pictures, which is odd because I've seen so many pictures on the internet of these deleted scenes. And even if you look at the deleted footage, they could have grabbed, I imagine, a screen grab and just kind of worked it out. But no, for some reason, it was decided that they were going to use art, which, hey, you know what? Better than nothing, but too bad they couldn't find any cool pictures. 2 quick items that were not mentioned at Toy Fair, but were later through the internet we were able to find is that there's 2 more sets that they're going to put out later in the year, I believe. One of them is an Ewok set with a whole bunch of Ewoks being sold together as a pack of, I believe, something like 5. And also an X-Wing / Imperial TIE Fighter pilot pack. Again, some of them you might have been able to buy before as individuals, but they're putting them together. But for some reason, they weren't ready to announce these at Toy Fair. So overall, as I mentioned before, as far as news goes, it's a mixed blessing, if you will, as far as I'm concerned, because on one hand, not a lot of things that I'm particularly interested in are coming out. Most of the stuff that I am interested in was already announced before, so I was already planning on getting it. The good side of that is the fact that I don't have to go out there and spend a lot of money because I'm not really crazy about these items. So again, as far as I'm concerned, the deleted scene figures are the only ones I'm looking for. I do like the packaging of those alternate art Comic-Con exclusive figures that are coming out, and I would love to have, you know, I'm not talking about the entire set because it's a set of 6. It's really 7 because it has that bonus figure in the middle, that Carbonite Jar Jar. But I'm talking about the card backs. I would love to have just one of those card backs because I really love that art. I really like that runner-up art that they somehow found and were able to repackage it into something new. And looking forward, I guess the next big event we have is going to be Comic-Con because, like I said, on Comic-Con, when they do San Diego Comic-Con, they usually do have more news in terms of announcing more toys. And right around the corner, you know, a month or 2 later, you got Celebration 6. So they're going to even have to make more announcements then. So this is going to be a very busy year, and they would explain why the year started off kind of slow in terms of what merchandise is going to be out there, because this is going to be a 3-event year where they have to spread out the news. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for our final part 3 of our coverage of New York Toy Fair 2012, specifically this time around focusing on Hasbro, one of my favorite Star Wars lines. And I hope you guys come back next week when we have a new show for you. Until then, see you next time on Geekfest Rants. Bye-bye.
His name was Solo.
Han Solo.
He was a pilot with a blaster at his side and a smile 12 parsecs wide there with Chewbacca. He was a Wookiee. They met with Luke and Obi-Wan about the Millennium Falcon docking bay 94. Stormtroopers at the door with a flash of Ben's lightsaber. Now there's an arm on the floor at the Star Wars Cantina. The weirdest creatures you've ever seen.
Stop.